You are listening to the EPT Works Listen, Love, Give podcast. Hi, I'm Dr. Annette Cargioli, the Forgiveness Doctor. I'm here to help you create phenomenal health, happiness, and new life with energy, intuition, and forgiveness. In a world where emotional health is often treated with mind-altering drugs or years of talk therapy, it's time for more compassionate, imaginative initiatives in emotional health care. EPT is short for Emotional Polarity Technique, an innovative holistic emotional therapy that will change your life and health for good. You can learn more about Emotional Polarity Technique through my new book, The Forgiveness Doctor, available on Amazon.com. You can subscribe to this podcast, get free EPT training at EPTworks.com, and like us on Facebook. In this episode, I'll be sharing Part 2, Chapter 8 from my book, The Forgiveness Doctor, EPT Advanced Concepts, Guilt, Shame, and Humiliation, Addiction, S.U.E.s, and Action Steps. Guilt, Shame, and Humiliation. Over the years, I have been asked where guilt or shame is on the emotion chart. Guilt, shame, and humiliation carry their own energy frequencies. They are different than emotions. Many times when I'm working with someone who is carrying this kind of energy, they will tell me of their guilt, shame, or humiliation. Other times, I just sense it based on the person's story. Of course, you can just ask the body through muscle testing to verify if you feel a need for validation. Guilt is usually carried by the actual person who is guilty or offended. However, one who is not actually guilty may pick up this energy for the guilty person. Shame is a distinct energy frequency that is most often picked up by those who have been victims of others' guilty behavior. A rape victim feels shame for having been raped, even though she did not ask for it and could not have prevented it. She feels shame just because this happened to her and she was involved in this horrible crime. A molested child feels shame for being the one who was molested, even though he could not change it or prevent it. Often, people from a divorced family feel shame because their family parents got divorced. People with physical deformity or disability can also feel shame for being deformed or disabled. Humiliation is when shame or guilt becomes public. A rape victim is humiliated because she has to tell 3 different male detectives all the details of what happened to her. Then she has to tell her story in a court full of strangers. An incest victim is humiliated when the family openly discounts their story and tells them to shut up, even years later. I form forgiveness statements around the words guilt, shame, and humiliation, along with simple release affirmations to heal and release this dark energy. Statements for healing and releasing the energy of guilt, shame, and humiliation. I forgive myself for believing I can't let go of the guilt, shame, humiliation. I forgive myself for believing holding on to this guilt, shame, or humiliation secures my position in my family. I forgive myself for believing being guilty, shamed, or humiliated gives me identity. I forgive myself for what I did that made me guilty, ashamed, or humiliated. I forgive myself for blaming myself for the guilty or shameful behavior of another person. I forgive the person for blaming me for their guilty or shameful behavior. I forgive my dad for being guilty or shameful. I forgive my mom for humiliating me. I give my dad permission to forgive me for blaming them for my guilt, shame, or humiliation. I give my dad permission to forgive me for hating him or myself. I give myself permission to let go of the energy of guilt, shame, and humiliation. I say yes to the energy of guilt, shame, and humiliation that I picked up in this situation, and I call it up to release it to divine love and gratitude. I say yes to the energy of guilt, shame, and humiliation, and I call it up and I release it at the cross. Without this shame and guilt, I am free to accept myself, love others, and let them love me. Without this shame and guilt, I can forgive my dad for hurting me. I can stop blaming myself. Without this shame, I am free to be who God intended for me to be and to do what God intended me to do from the beginning. The concept of an idol. Before we continue on to addiction, there's another important concept. An idol is anything that you depend on in order to connect to the divine and to receive the blessings of the divine. So if I am hurting and alone, I can depend on drinking or smoking or eating to take away the hurting and give me the illusion that I am good. Addiction is a soul sickness that has been around since the beginning of time. This soul sickness appears as a deep dependency on a substance or behavior that provides the illusion of security, happiness, or love in your life. Addiction promises good things while simultaneously eroding goodness in your life and preventing you from getting what you want. For example, George tried to explain to me the reason he had affairs was to improve his relationship with his wife and to save his marriage. Amy felt miserable at 300 pounds and told me she overeats because food is the only thing that makes her happy. Addiction separates you from your divine source. It is an idol. Addiction is a sort of bargain. If I do this, I will get that. A chronic action. It's taken under the illusion it will make something in your life better. It is you turning away from God instead of toward God. You feel empty and unloved, and you turn to alcohol to take away the pain. The alcohol numbs your feelings and a quick fix for your pain. Turning to God when you have life pain may require you let go of beliefs and forgive someone you hate, even if that person is you. When addiction runs your behavior, you feel bad and automatically default into a pattern that seems to fix the pain. Even though it is easy to think of addiction in the form of hardcore drugs and alcohol, the truth is we all have our own fixes. An addictive fix is always a destructive behavior such as chronic hateful anger, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, gluttony, self-hatred, sexual abuse, chronic negativity, pornography, gambling, or spouse abuse. The instant gratification that comes with the fix keeps you in the cycle. These are the substances and behaviors you depend on when your real need is divine relationship. The only fixes that can work to heal you are those solutions that work in alignment with divine purpose through godly virtues of peace, truth, love, and forgiveness. Everyone goes through hard stuff in life. I believe your life journey and mine is about learning to love and give more in alignment with infinite divine love. When pain interferes in your life and you start depending on your fix, you separate yourself from the awareness of your divine connection to God. In this separation, you get caught up in a cycle of pain and fix, pain and fix. This is the root of the soul sickness that is addiction. Addiction comes in many varieties. People with hardcore addictions of drug and alcohol abuse should seek to utilize every healing intervention available, including Alcoholics Anonymous, group therapy, drug and alcohol counseling, and EPT. The more interventions that are utilized, the faster the addict can turn his life around. I will only work with addicts who are actively pursuing every avenue of healing available to them. EPT can help change the energetic patterns of the addiction through generational forgiveness and open the addict up to reconnecting with divine love. It can also help break down the self-delusion that keeps the addict in his behavior. The dangerous state of self-delusion. In the early 1960s, Vernon E. Johnson developed a model for intervening with chemically dependent people. At the time, most experts believed you couldn't help someone who didn't want help. Johnson discovered that an addicted person remains in that state only because he or she lives in a state of self-delusion. He reasoned that if a focused group of people could break through the alcoholic's or drug addict's rationalizations and self-delusions, they could bring him to a point of lucidity where he would recognize the need for help. Unless a person is totally corrupt and just doesn't care what is right or wrong, the same process of self-delusion occurs with those persons addicted to any self-destructive behavior. For example, rage, pornography, gambling, spouse abuse. He must delude himself into believing that his bad behavior really never happened, or is much less serious than it actually is. Intervention with the drug-dependent addict aims at overcoming self-delusions, making the person face the truth about his behavior. Once the person accepts the truth about himself, he usually accepts the path to healing offered by those who brought about the realization. Breaking through the wall of self-delusion creates a powerful opportunity to help the addict recover. Forgiveness statements for the self-deluded. I forgive myself for believing I have to hide every ugly part of myself to survive. I forgive myself for believing I have to deny the truth when I believe it will hurt me or someone I love. I forgive myself for believing I have to hide or bury ugly parts of myself to keep someone I love happy or safe. I forgive myself for believing there is nothing I have ever done that I am ashamed of. I forgive myself for believing that I cannot accept every part of myself and my experience without hurting myself or the one I love. I forgive myself for believing someone, parent or spouse, will kill me if I reveal the truth of my behavior. I forgive myself for believing I need the wall to protect me from being hurt by myself or others. I forgive myself for believing I need to create the fantasy world to be happy because reality will kill me. I forgive myself for holding on to a reality about myself that does not exist. I give myself permission to accept that God loves me the way I am. I give myself permission to accept that God knew from the beginning that I would fail to live up to the perfect standard. I give myself permission to accept I can face what is behind the wall and survive. I give myself permission to accept there is no wall. I give myself permission to accept that my fantasy world is not reality. I give myself permission to accept that the stuff behind the wall won't kill me if I let it out. I give myself permission to accept that even though I hide from myself, I can never hide from God, and He still loves me and accepts me. I give myself permission to accept the wall. I give myself permission to accept what I have hidden behind the wall. I give myself permission to ask God to reveal the hidden, scary parts of myself. I love and accept myself even when I am afraid to look behind the wall. I love and accept myself even when I am afraid I will never break down the wall. I love and accept myself even when I am afraid I don't deserve to heal. I love and accept myself even when I'm afraid it won't matter. I will just build a new wall. I love and accept myself even when I'm afraid I will die. Subjective Units of Elation Scale, or S.U.E.s. When alcoholics, drug, or food addicts are asked why they use, the answer is usually because it makes me feel better. It feels good. Energetically, emotionally, and physiologically, they associate happiness, love, and feeling good with the destructive effects of the drug behavior. Their feeling of elation serves as one motivating factor to continue the addictive behavior. EPT can be used to lower the elation experience the addict has associated with their destructive habit. For knowledge seekers, the practitioner will start by asking the body on a scale of 1 to 10, how good does heroin make you feel? 10 represents the highest intensity of feeling. The practitioner may also ask the client to rate how good it feels on a scale of 1 to 10. Next, the practitioner will ask what emotion or emotions best represent that elation, that happiness. Test. Is it joy? Test. Love? Test. Peace? Test. Security? Test. Safety? Test. Completeness? Test. Worthiness? Test. Now the practitioner asks the body, in what area do you hold this elation? Usually it is held in the heart. But you ask, is it the liver? Test. Heart? Test. Lung? Test. Etc. The body biofield correction is the same as EPT correction, with one magnet over an organ and one magnet over the forehead. The practitioner asks the client to think of the peace associated with doing heroin. Test will be weak. The practitioner 2 points to the organ found in step 3 with a strengthening magnet. The practitioner removes the magnet. The practitioner 2 points to emotional points on the forehead with the strengthening magnet. The practitioner places a strengthening magnet over the organ and a strengthening magnet over the forehead. The practitioner instructs the client to think of the peace associated with doing heroin. Gently squeeze the side of the client's head 3 times on inhalation, relaxing the squeeze on exhalation. Coach the client through forgiveness and fear release statements. Finally, the practitioner reassesses the subjective units of elation. The goal is to get it down to 0 or as close to 0 as possible. Some examples of S.U.E.s forgiveness and fear release statements. I forgive myself for believing I can't experience peace without heroin. I forgive myself for believing heroin is my greatest source of peace. I forgive myself for believing that real peace does not exist without heroin. I forgive myself for believing if I stop doing heroin, it won't be good for me. I forgive myself for believing I can't let go of heroin. I love and accept myself even when I am afraid to live without heroin. I will miss heroin. I love and accept myself even when I am afraid I will do heroin again and nothing will change that. I love and accept myself even when I am afraid to be without heroin forever. I love and accept myself even when I am afraid I will be scared and sick without heroin. Blanche was an elementary school teacher and a mother of 2 small children when she came to see me with her pot habit. She managed to keep her habit a secret by smoking in a closet in an unoccupied room in her house. She admitted to smoking at least 3 times a week and wondered if it was even possible for her to give it up. On a scale of 1 to 10, her elation for even thinking about smoking pot was off the chart. She gave it a 12. I used the S.U.E.s technique to lower her elation, and when she came back, she announced to me that I had ruined her pot. She told me she was smoking less because it did not feel as good. By lowering the emotional elation she had associated with pot, she was stuck with just the sedative effects of the drug without her usual emotional high of just anticipating getting to smoke. I reminded her that she had asked for help to stop smoking pot, and she agreed. She admitted she didn't think it would really work and was surprised and sad when it actually made her smoking experience less desirable. After a few more EPT sessions, Blanche gave up her pot habit for good. While S.U.E.s technique can be extremely valuable with tangible addictions, drug and alcohol, it is also useful with intangible addictions such as anger and low self-esteem. Jacob was a 9-year-old boy with a history of anger and rage. Basic EPT was very helpful. His health improved, and overall, there was much fewer outbursts of anger. When I asked him how anger made him feel, he told me he liked anger and that it made him feel good. I applied the technique for lowering the subjective units of elation he had associated with his anger. There seemed to be an immediate change. His school teacher could hardly believe the change. His mother commented that the hard, seemingly permanent scowl lines present on his face had disappeared, and he was much happier and relaxed. Even though you may never drink or take drugs, if you are prone to any destructive behavior, you have an addiction. Virtually everyone has developed some dependency that keeps them stuck. You are prone to do what you are familiar with. If eating a quart of ice cream is your fix for depression, you will never learn what you really need to let go of to be happy. Negative emotions can become destructive when you use them as your go-to feeling that fixes your pain. Anger and rigidness can become the energy that allows a person to control another person. Low self-esteem or sadness can become the energy that allows you to get more love and touch in relationships. Virtually any behavior that keeps you from experiencing real love in your divine connection is destructive. When you keep going after that destructive behavior, you are addicted. Addictions representing a negative emotion. This technique is used with chronic destructive problems you have in your life. Excess weight, chronic pain, bad relationships, financial failure, lack of success, poor digestion, cancer, tumors, addictions. For knowledge seekers, addiction to negative emotion technique. First, ask the body, does this problem represent a negative emotion you are unwilling to let go of? The muscle test weak. 2-point to the organ with one hand. The muscle test strong. Remove your hand from the client's organ. Next, identify the emotion by verbally asking, for example, if the organ was the liver, is it anger? Test. Is it resentment? Test. The client's muscle will test weak when stating the correct emotion. For example, anger. Then ask the body, is there an original time when you felt or took on this anger? Do the EPT 4-step formula, focus, find it, fix it, forgive it. Ways to use EPT for healing addiction. Ask the body, with regard to this addiction, what stage of healing are you in? Do EPT. Ask the body on a scale of 1 to 10, how good does this addiction make you feel? Do the EPT addiction procedure for subjective units of elation technique. 3. Ask the body, does this addiction represent a negative emotion you are unwilling to let go of? Use the procedure above. Number 4. Ask the body on a scale of 1 to 10. How bad do you feel without this addictive substance? Can we lower the number? The muscle test weak equals yes. How many issues are there to lower the S.U.E.s, subjective units of distress? Have the client think about the first issue. Do EPT, putting it all together, technique. Ask the body, is this your addiction? Test. Or a generational addiction? Test. If the muscle test weak on generational addiction, tell the client's body to think about the emotional issues involving the generational addiction. Next, ask, how many are there? 1, 2, test. The client is asked to think about the first one. The muscle test weak? 2-point to the forehead, do EPT using forgiveness statements on generational addiction. Here's some forgiveness statements for generational addiction. I forgive myself for believing I have to carry the family burden of generational addiction in my life. I forgive myself for taking on the generational addiction that has been secret in my family for generations. I forgive myself for believing that letting go of my family's generational addiction would be very bad for my family and me. I forgive myself for believing I have to be consciously aware of the secret addictions of my ancestors to heal them and let them go. I forgive the generations before me for believing they are still broken and addicted. I forgive those generations before me for holding on to pain and addiction that no longer exist in them or me. I forgive those generations before me for passing this addiction on to me or others. I give the generations before me permission to forgive me for exposing the family secret so that we may be healed. I give the generations before me permission to accept that I changed and now they are free. I give the generations before me permission to accept that I have seen, heard, and felt their pain of addiction, and it is finished. I choose to heal the pain of addiction in the generations before me now. Action steps. Occasionally, I have run across a person who, no matter how much emotional healing I do, seems blocked. They just don't seem to get the healing results they're looking for. It's not that healing was not effective, it's just hasn't been tested to validate its effectiveness. Emotional healing and forgiveness is always effective in opening you up to new life. When you release the pain, anger, fear, and grief, you raise your frequency to more closely match the divine virtues of love, forgiveness, peace, and joy. You still must take action out of the energy of godly virtues to create something better. The relationships you create out of the energy of anger, insecurity, or trauma will produce more experiences of anger, insecurity, and trauma. When you create out of the energy of love, forgiveness, happiness, and security, you will create relationships that produce more experiences of love, forgiveness, happiness, and security. Your emotional energy is the fuel that drives your action to create your life, relationships, and business. When you drive with a tank full of anger, you will create and attract more anger. When you drive with a tank full of love and acceptance, you will create and attract more love and acceptance. If you don't take different action, you won't create anything. When you don't think anything has changed through EPT, it is time to take a serious look at the action you are taking. You must take action to get the result you are seeking. The action you must take can be identified as an action that requires faith, an action you have been making excuses not to do, an action that has hurt in the past, an action that deep down you know you must take. It is you who must take the leap of faith and act out of your new energy. The result will only be different if you have moved your energy signature to a higher place of greater love, acceptance, and forgiveness. When you take action out of the energy of divine love, you can act in faith that you will be lifted up to something better in your life than you ever imagined. Crystal showed up for EPT out of complete desperation. From the age of 16, she had struggled with extreme depression, suicidal tendency, and cutting. Crystal's parents had a loving relationship, and her two older sisters were emotionally healthy. At age 16, Crystal checked herself into a local hospital stress unit because her own dark thoughts were causing her to fear for her own life. Medications were used along with individual and family therapy. Crystal tried hard to present herself as normal. She feared ruining her good family and causing all manner of shame for who she was. As Crystal entered college, she became dependent on drugs and alcohol to cope with her internal emotional struggle. At age 20, an emotional collapse occurred and Crystal tried to take her own life. This time, shock therapy was part of her course of treatment. Even though Crystal hated her life and still wanted to just end it, she went back to work and tried to live as well as she could. She was now dependent on a couple of prescription drugs as well as using alcohol to continue to cope. Her fear of hurting or shaming her family in her death was the only thing that kept her going. At age 29, a physical, emotional, and mental collapse brought her to me for EPT. I had overheard her mom talking about how badly she was doing and that they were afraid that she might have to be institutionalized for life. I offered to help her. When she arrived, I had no idea about her coping habits. I really thought I could turn her life around with EPT in just a few months. 1 year into my work with her, she was angry and wanted to know when her life was going to change and when the darkness would stop plaguing her. I knew her and I had done good work. She was most definitely better than when she started, but it always seemed short-lived. From the start, I had told her that she would have to restrict alcohol and also eliminate any extracurricular drugs. Crystal constantly fought me on this. I reminded her that her brain had to heal in order for her life to get better. Excess drugs and alcohol will not allow this to happen. She continued to do EPT weekly, and her progress was very slow. 2.5 years later, when she confronted me again about her life change, I told her I would not continue to see her unless she gave up the excess alcohol and drugs. The things that she was sure were helping her hold it together were precisely what she needed to take action on and give up. The EPT was not going to magically make her stop her coping habits if she did not want to do that. The EPT was also not going to create the change she wanted if she would not take the right actions in her life. As toxic as Crystal made her life, her heart was pure. I really loved her for that. Reluctantly, she agreed to take the action of giving up the toxic behaviors in an effort to be better. Crystal's recovery began to speed up. She even added other holistic interventions into her life to replace the toxicity. EPT was the turning point that intervened with love and forgiveness. Crystal's right action created the transformation in her life. Crystal has gone on to become an insightful healer, full of love and compassion for those she serves. It has been several years since Crystal began her career as an EPT practitioner. This recent letter from her brought tears to my eyes. Dear Dr. Annette, I feel like the universe has given me an EPT graduation of sorts. I had my first porn addict EPT session. The universe was kind because he had been exposed and admitted for over a year and had done a lot of work. But still, to be able to sit with someone without judgment, provide understanding, and talk about potential damage to his children without making him the bad guy, and to feel strong and comfortable, and offer him a place to heal. I didn't know EPT is blowing my mind. I don't know. EPT is blowing my mind left and right these days. So humbling, so grateful for you, and on so many levels. I'm starting to think it never gets old, never stops blowing the mind, and helps people in ways I never see coming. Sigh. And still so much to learn. The 2 constellations I've done have provided evidence of change, and halfway through another constellation, April's specific statements came into fruition within hours. Crazy, but so much better than the crazy I was when none of this existed in my life. I've come to accept I will never truly repay you, and I know you don't care. I know that's how we all, EPT practitioners and our clients, feel. All I can do is tell you I love you and you've changed my life for the best, and you're helping people you may never meet. Thank you. Love, Crystal. I've mentioned another concept several times, a seemingly pervasive attitude in today's society that there must be somewhere a magic pill that will resolve all suffering. In traditional Western medicine, you may go to a specialist who relieves your symptoms with a prescription. When you suffer symptoms from that drug in a new area of the body, he may refer you to a different specialist, considering that his job is done since your presenting symptoms are gone. What seems to be missing in this cycle is an interest in the person as a whole, the root cause of the original symptoms and the habits and beliefs that frame the patient's life. EPT looks at negative and positive emotional energetic patterns, but never proclaims that this is the magic pill. The whole person is addressed. Releasing and forgiving negative emotional patterns can open new perspectives and beliefs, release obstructive energy so that it is available to create new positive beliefs and patterns. Emotions can prevent a person from advancing. As we saw way back in the beginning of Chapter 3 with Amanda and her pain and the skiing accident, a nutritional deficiency can do the same. The affirmations and forgiveness statements in EPT are designed to encourage each client to take responsibility for their own healing. A lack of self-discipline, a refusal to let go of bad habits formed early in life, and insistence on holding on to patterns of behavior which cause pain and anger can also contribute to dis-ease. Healing is a personal choice. You must come with a willingness to be responsible for your own health, to release bad or harmful habits, and to recognize when things are too great for you to handle on your own and ask for assistance. Inflexibility, rigidness, and an attitude of "you fix me" are often the main obstacles to the return to wellness. Thanks for listening. You can learn more about emotional polarity technique through my book, The Forgiveness Doctor, available at Amazon.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, like us on Facebook, and go get your free EPT training at EPTworks.com. I'm Dr. Annette Cargioli, the Forgiveness Doctor, sharing with you a more imaginative initiative in emotional health care. Until next time, listen, love, give. EPT works.